Hello, everyone. I saw a news article about 5 minutes ago, so I'm still ramped up about it. But because I read this article and the information in it, and it got my adrenaline flowing, I thought of two other things that happened to me personally, and I wanted to share. First of all, let me get to the article. I'm not going to call anybody out. I'm not going to call the business out. It is what it is. It's in the newspapers. It's online. It's public record. But I don't want to be focusing on the actual business because any attention is good attention, even if it's negative, and I don't want them to benefit from my video. So I'm just going to say it in a roundabout way. A man was driving his young son to the store after school, and he felt like he was having a heart attack. He pulled over. His son jumped out of the car and asked bystanders for help, and in addition called 911. A bystander happened to be a paramedic. He raced over, started chest compressions, and asked some other bystanders to go into the nearest little store there, which was feet away, because they had a defibrillator on their wall. Now, a lot of businesses do. I've seen them. They refused to allow the defibrillator to leave their building. And they said no, they would not help the man. And the man passed away in the street in front of his young son with this paramedic desperately trying to save his life. The ambulance was too far out to save him. I worked for a corporation in America for 6 years. I saw firsthand how toxic that environment was, and I no longer wanted to be a part of it, and I got out. Basically, I had a desk job, and these two people came in. They were not meeting with me. They were meeting with somebody else. They came in, and they were very frail and elderly. I sat in front of a nice big giant glass sunny window. Now, my desk faced into the office, but to my left was a huge window. Out of that window was all of the parking for clients and employees, and it went down the side of the building as well. There were different sections to this building, and on the other side, on the whole other side of the building, was a different company. The other company on the other side of the building from which I worked dealt in big equipment, and this was more like a storage facility than an actual operating business with the public. So they had, what do they call it, like a loading dock or a loading ramp in that side of the building, but we didn't go over there. That was theirs. We worked in an office and met with clients. So our parking was way smaller because we didn't have trucks coming in to unload big equipment. They had parked right outside of my big sunny window, and they had parked in the space closest to the entrance exit. When they came in, they just pulled in and then went right into that first space. So you would think this couple would have known that's how they came in. There were clear signs. There was a stop sign. There were clear exit entrance signs. But instead, when they backed out, they didn't back out to go out the exit. They backed out to go around the building. And I said to another employee, "Oh no, why are they going that way? What do they think is over there?" And the employee said, "Oh, they'll figure it out. Don't worry about it." And I said, "Oh, okay." It's kind of odd because the exit is right there. So I'm a little concerned. Maybe they're confused. Sure enough, I had good reason to have that intuition going on. They didn't stop at the gate on our side of the building that said, "Not an exit, warning." They didn't stop there. When the couple saw the sign, when they saw the fence, the driver, who was the wife in this couple, she stepped on the gas. I really think it was because she got confused and scared. Instead of just stopping and reversing and then going back out the correct way, she stepped on her gas and she went flying through this back area. And she stepped on the gas again, went ahead and flew her car off of the loading dock. So the portion where she came from was the higher surface. The other side was the ramp that went down. When she flew over it, she went head first. Her car went head first and hit the ramp that was at least 10 feet below the top surface of the dock. This is to allow 18-wheelers to back up with the big equipment and unload it there to the top of the dock with fork trucks and whatever they do. Now there are two elderly people trapped in a car, pretty much on the car's head, pretty much downward. There was no angle. They were face down. I heard it. It sounded like an explosion. Thankfully, it was not an explosion. It was just the really loud noise of the metal hitting the cement. I would guess that this lady was about 80 or so. The husband was in his 90s. He was extremely frail. It was a very hot day. That particular day was about 90 degrees, which is hot for my area. They also had two giant dogs in the back of their car. I don't even know what these dog breeds were, but they were really massive dogs. You can imagine how this couple felt. When I got out there and saw the situation, I knew I could not remove these people from the vehicle. I didn't know if they had a neck injury, a back injury. I said, somebody call 911. My cell phone was at my desk, which was way, way, way up in the front of the building. So I didn't have a cell phone. There were at least 7 men out there who were my coworkers and the manager. And I said, please, somebody call 911. I said, fine, if nobody's going to call 911, then I'll go use the office phone to call 911 because there was a phone back there. And I started heading into that part of the building to use a phone. And my manager said, if you pick up that phone, you'll be fired on the spot. I was like, excuse me? What? I said, oh, are you calling 911? He said, no. Maybe I'm unreasonable. Maybe it's just me. I'm sorry. I thought that would be the right thing to do. 2 very frail elderly people in a car nosedived into a loading dock with 2 dogs on a 90-degree day. I thought it would be reasonable of me to call 911. But the manager said, absolutely not. We're not doing that. It's not our problem. Okay, this was back off of the road. So the chances of a passerby ever noticing this was no. There was no chance. Second of all, the business next to us that had the loading dock space, they were closed and they weren't going to be reopening until 2 days later on a Monday. This was a Friday afternoon. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, we're just going to leave them here? I don't understand your mentality right now. He said, no, it's not our problem. It's company protocol. I'm the manager. Well, you might be the manager, but this is about 2 people in a car face down in a ditch and 2 dogs. What are you going to do? What do you suggest? So he finally called the non-emergency service number for the police station. So I, because I'm a big mouth and I don't hold back, started screaming into the phone. People were holding me back, trying to get me away from him. And I didn't care. Plowed my way through and I said, listen to me. Whoever you are on that phone, you listen to me right now. There are 2 frail elderly people. They heard me on the phone. Now, this was right after COVID. Lockdowns weren't a thing anymore. People were back to pretty much, doing everything already. Even though they heard me on the non-emergency line, they did not send for help. So that empowered the manager to tell me to mind my own business. And if I didn't like the policy of the company, I could leave and not come back. I wasn't in a position then to quit. But I knew this wasn't right. So I stood at the railing by the folks who were hysterical at this point, scared out of their mind, wondering why nobody was helping them. I said, okay, are your dogs friendly? Oh yeah, absolutely. Big love bugs. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to get dogs out. We're going to open the hatch. Can you open the hatch? So the lady opened the hatch. I said, okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to open your doors, but keep your seatbelts on because they were up high. I'm sorry. I didn't want them falling out of the car. They open their door for air because it's 90 degrees. They can't turn their car on. Something happened in the impact. They can't turn their air on. It's 90 degrees, mind you. I got the dogs out of the back and I went to get a bowl of water. Tried to find any bowl. I didn't know. I didn't have a bowl on me, so I tried to do what I could. Somebody actually followed my path and they also got a bowl to help me. The manager assured me the police were on their way. I said, yeah, but you called the non-emergency number. There's no ambulance. There's no fire truck. You know, I say there's no oil leaking. There's no gas leaking, but we don't really know that. We can't really see under the vehicle. The manager said, it's not our problem. They're the ones that drove into the ramp. I just wanted him to call for an ambulance. I just wanted him to call 911. And he forbid anybody from calling from any device. So all I could do at this point, as they're crying, they're hysterical, they're asking for their son, he forbid us from calling their family. An hour and a half later, the police showed up. Let that sink in for a minute. 90-degree day. I have the dogs inside where the air is. They're drinking water. 2 elderly people are outside in a car, nosedived, pretty much in a ditch-like situation. And it took an hour and a half for the non-emergency police to come out. The officer arrives on the scene. He says, I'm Officer so-and-so. I didn't say anything. I behaved. The manager says, hi, I'm the manager I called. I don't know what to do here. These people drove off this and nosedived. We were on our way out. Like he was inconvenienced. The police officer said, who was screaming into the phone? I said, it was me. I was. Okay? Because this isn't right. There should be police, fire, ambulance here. 911 should have been called. He said, you're right. Because I can't do anything in this situation. The manager said, what do you mean? We waited an hour and a half for you. He goes, well, that wasn't the right number to call. You should have called 911. So at that point, I was fuming. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Why didn't you, when you heard me screaming, because you just told me you did, why didn't you tell the people in your office to call 911? You're the police. And this isn't to criticize police. I don't want you to get that impression. They were only going by what the manager said. Even though they heard me screaming, he was telling them I was just hysterical in the background. So they didn't know. They just knew that there was no 911 call. But they set the record straight. Yes, absolutely call 911. We can't do anything here. So the police called it in. They called 911. Within about 10 minutes, everybody came out. Fire trucks, rescues, ambulances. Thankfully, these 2 elderly people were not hurt. It shook them up. The biggest factor was that nobody helped them. Even though I tried, they took it like, why didn't you call 911? And you know what? I regret it. I should have went to the phone anyway and got fired for it. I should have. But I didn't. And that's not me. I have a value system. I should have absolutely called 911 that day. Thankfully, like I said, they weren't hurt. I kept them hydrated. I kept giving them water bottles. Kept their dogs hydrated. And the manager was spoken to by the police at the end. But then the company came out and said it is against their policy to call 911. It is against their policy to get involved because they don't want to handle the liability, especially when it wasn't their fault and it was this person's fault for driving off the loading dock behind the building. And they decided that that wasn't anything to do with the company. And they kind of empowered the manager with that sense of, oh, well, if somebody gets hurt here, I don't have to deal with it. I can just walk away and it's not my problem. And when I read that article today, all this came flooding back. Like, yeah, I've been there, done that. How awful. The son reached out to me and he knew it wasn't my fault, and I apologized. And I said, I'm so sorry. I should never have listened to that. I should have done what I felt was right, because humans come first. Humans come before company profits. And I know there's going to be some companies who disagree with that. But that's just too bad. Because without humans, there would be no companies. Which leads me to the next story. This same company, during COVID, laid off a bunch of people. They kept a shell company going, but they only had a ghost staff. The people that they kept on didn't do anybody else's job. Nobody knew how to do my job. They couldn't do anybody else's job, so it was kind of pointless. But they laid everybody else off for a while because it was COVID. And I know a lot of people were in the same boat as that. But then they brought us all back. And today, I opened my computer, and in addition to reading this article, this older article about the man that had a heart attack on the sidewalk next to this business, there is another article talking about prepare yourself now, because companies don't care about you. They care about their profits. And there are a bunch of jobs, and we've seen this all over YouTube in the news, I'm sure, about AI takeovers, but there is a guy warning people, and he is in like the financial sector. He's warning people. He says these are the jobs that are going to be cut first. And I am so grateful to be out of that company, because the job I did, which was basically data analysis and reports, is cut. That's going to be one of the first to go. That's not my background, so that's not even my specialty. I just happened to fall into this job and I was good at it, but now those are going to be the first jobs to go. So just listen to my stories here and think about what the message is. Companies do not put people first. And if you work for a great company and you love your company, that is a really good thing. Hold on to it as long as you can. I did not have that experience at the corporation I worked for. But if you are in a data analysis function capacity, you may want to start putting out your feelers, because even if you have a great job, even if you think they'll never let me go, they need me. This financial guy was talking about it today. And based on my experience with how they treat people, companies do not value human interest. Am I talking about every single company? No, I am not. I'm sure the small bakery down the street isn't thinking like that. I'm sure the local market isn't thinking like that. But these big, giant companies absolutely are thinking like that. Thanks so much for watching today. Take care.